It's quite easy to misattribute your success to your collective skill and cleverness rather than just good fortune. This is James Allison talking, technical director of Mercedes, the boys and girls from Brackley and Brixworth. Everything that we've said on this channel hitherto erstwhile about Mercedes' downfall, their pitfalls, their ineptitude, season to date over the past 36 months has been absolutely on the money. All of the things that we've criticised them for, not working in an agile fashion, being too technically arrogant, stuck in their ways. Today on the Beyond the Grid podcast, one James Allison has proven all of this correct beyond reasonable doubt. He spoke to all of it. Everything that's led up to now, the mistakes that they're making, the reason why they were able to be successful over the course of 8 seasons and why that's gone away since, faded to black. Fugazi, he does the root cause analysis and puts it on a plate for us. We've got to go through it. It's too brilliant of a conversation, too insightful, far too enlightening. He talks about Sir Lewis Hamilton. He responds to some of the comments that Lewis has made, insinuating sabotage and or foul play, that he's not on the receiving end of equal machinery as versus George Russell. James Allison talks to that. He addresses it. He compliments Lewis Hamilton too, talks about him potentially being the greatest driver. However, he's less than complimentary, less than optimistic when talking about Lewis Hamilton moving across the Maranello and Scuderia Ferrari. We will talk about all of it. He talks about qualifying, Lewis's lack of performance and potentially that rolling forward through to the season end as well. He agrees with Lewis, but for different reasons. Let's get into it, man. I can't even. The podcast game of late has been bonkers. Listen, if you're a fan of F1 and you like hearing the protagonist speak to truth, understanding the whys and the hows as much as the whats, then some of these chats, I've got to place them above some of the racing that we've seen of late. I will be honest with you guys. This is like bonkers. It's so juicy. Now listen, people will call me a gossip monger and say, yeah, it's gossip, folks. Listen, this is F1. I love these guys. I love this sport. I want to understand more about it. And when James Allison, with all his knowledge and all his Shakespearean verbiage, gets in front of the camera and waxes lyrical, speaks to these circumstances and situations that we've never been privy to, inject it into my veins. It's so techie, and he was so honest and earnest about his relationship with Toto and Lewis. Listen, let's get into it. First and foremost, front load it with this. I will reiterate for the avoidance of doubt. He talks about their failings as a team, as an entity, Mercedes, Petronas, AMG, or whatever they're called now. Technical arrogance absolutely comes into it. They're failing to understand the assignment that was the 2022 regulations. He says a couple of different things. He says your skill is being able to get it right first time. And there is luck in and of that too. Good fortune will always play a part in F1. He even talks about Red Bull as their protagonist, their key rivals, saying that they happened upon a good situation in nailing the rules and regs straight out the gate in 2022. The skill, James Allison says, was managing to steer them in the right direction, keep them on the straight and narrow, but there was absolutely luck in the circumstance that the bulls that are red found themselves in hitting upon the jackpot as far as the design philosophy first time round. This is chaotic. Conversely, why did Mercedes flop the case? Why are they only just now managing to hit on a design philosophy that yields some performance on track? But there's a couple bits in there. Listen, I had to take notes on this. It was too extensive. I don't like to read on camera. I feel like it's rude. But in this circumstance, to make sure I cover it as comprehensively as possible, I had to. Do forgive me. James says their way of working in the previous era was very, very effective. Indeed, it yielded their 8 Constructors' Championship and countless Drivers' Championships worthy of note too. However, what was a strength in that era was a weakness in this, and they failed to adapt for that. Here's what James Allison says. They were insufficiently self-critical to realise that their strengths had become weaknesses, being the suspension and the chassis in previous era, hitherto 2021. Those things were orthogonal. They operated independently. There was no intersecting feature. In 2022, however, you need to nail both of those. They are one entity, our suspension, aero and chassis. You need to nail them as a package, have them interacting and talking to each other. If you fail to nail that, then you are doomed to fail in this rule and reg set. And that, says James Allison, is exactly where they flopped the case. They're building brilliant suspension that works independent of anything else. Brilliant chassis and brilliant aero. These three things are the holy trinity. They need to talk to each other. James Allison says that they did not do that for Mercedes. Only just now, as at June 2024, are they getting it. Bringing a floor that works together with a front wing, that works together with the rest of the aero and a brilliant suspension. Only just now are they understanding it, whereas Red Bull got that message. They understood that assignment straight out of the gate in March of 2022. What are we doing? Everything, chat, that we spoke about Mercedes, James Allison has spoken to in this podcast, the Beyond the Grid podcast, and it's proven to be correct. I don't want to do this patting myself on the back thing, but you guys have heard Peter Windsor on a gazillion occasions by now talk about Peter Wright leaving Toto Wolff a note saying, listen, good luck with the ground effect cars. If you need some advice, drop me a line. Who better to speak to than Peter Wright? But such is Mercedes' technical arrogance as at June 2024, Toto, James, Mike Elliott, none of those reached out to the guys and girls who had done it, who had made a living out of handling and solving the Rubik's Cube that is ground effect before them. The great ones, the good ones, learn from their own mistakes. The great ones learn from previous other people's mistakes. Toto Wolff, James Allison, Mike Elliott in that sense, failed the Mercedes brand and themselves. And this is what Allison's talking to. Here's another one as well. You're like, Allison said he joined in 2017 and the team was already very well aware, having won 4 constructors championship at that stage. So the team were already well aware that one day the thing that would kill them, the thing that would end their success, their long enduring success, courtesy of durable competitive advantage over the rest of the field, the thing that was going to nail them, complacency. He says that Toto Wolff did a brilliant job at nailing that many-headed, multifaceted dragon that is complacency for as long as he did. But James Allison says it was always going to be a matter of when, not if, and it was always going to be complacency. That was the suspect most likely. He knew, they knew that that day would come when their success would come to an end and it would be a function of complacency creeping into the team. He says, and I love this, Shakespearean is Mr. Allison in his delivery. He says he was always fearful that they were lacking the sting of defeat and and as a result of that they would not be turning over the rocks that would be necessary to stay strong. That's a quote verbatim. I'll read it to you again because I think it's super powerful. James Allison said even when he arrived in 2017, he was fearful that they were lacking the sting of defeat and that would result in them not turning over the rocks requisite to stay strong. Oh, the humanity, chat. What are we doing? He's giving it to us. This is the root cause analysis from the inside that we've been dying for all this time. Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes evangelists, they'll get back. They'll be back there. Well, this is the how and the why that we wanted to talk to for the longest time. You guys have heard Peter Windsor nailing it on the money each and every single time when explaining why Mercedes find themselves in this circumstance. As far as ground effect era cars, they didn't get the memorandum. They didn't understand the assignment, being the interaction between suspension, chassis, and aero. Those three things are as important as each other. They talk to each other in ground effect cars. Chaos. He says props to Toto Wolff. He's a legend. Talks about his relationship with, says that he talks of as if he doesn't care about the detrimental effect that what he says might have on his career. Tells you something about who James Allison is. I like him as a man. He's cut from the same cloth as Adrian Newey. Maybe not quite as god tier a genius F1 mind, but nearly. He was around at the time 2000 to 2004 Schumacher heyday. You could argue that he was instrumental in all those Michael Schumacher championships, maybe as instrumental as Brawn and Jean Todt. This is the type of caliber of person that you're dealing with. You only need to listen to him and hear the way he constructs his sentences. Proper wordsmith settings. I enjoyed listening to him, but he kept dropping bombs. Humongous, perfect information size bombs. Here's what he said. You don't have to make many mistakes before they get you. And they made a humongous one, did they not? As far as not getting the assignment that was ground effect cars, being too technically arrogant to listen to those who had come before, those who had conquered ground effect cars back in the bloody 70s, Lotus settings, Peter Wright. He reached out, he wanted to counsel you guys and guide you to the promised land, but so technically arrogant, so lacking in agile thinking and agile working. As per James Allison, they were insufficiently self-critical to realise the error of their ways. Oh, the humanity chat. What are we doing here? Allison is nuts. Go on then. What else did he say? This is where it gets techie. I apologise for reading, but I have to cover this properly, in earnest, comprehensively. It's too big a subject, far too big a story, a news story. I'll have you know. You don't have to make too many mistakes before they get you, and we made a big one in brackets. This one, not record. Okay, his words, not mine. This mistake, James Allison says, and I quote, not recognising the interactions necessary between aero and suspension and track. That, James Allison said, has had the impact. That has been the failing of the Mercedes empire. Oh, the humanity. Unbelievable. This feels like a confessional as I'm watching it. He's telling us all. We now understand the root cause analysis. This is the falling of the Mercedes AMG Petronas empire. This is why Messrs Hamilton and Russell are struggling. This is why Mercedes haven't been able to produce a car with the requisite minerals and speed, using which Lewis Hamilton and George Russell can challenge for races and championships. He talks more to this later on. Look, James continues, and he talks to his commitment ad infinitum. He says, we exist for one professional purpose, that is to arrive at a Grand Prix with a car capable of winning races, if not championships. If we do not provide that package to our drivers, then we have only ourselves to blame. Oh, the humanity. How much more candid do you want to be? I feel like this is the conversation that I've been waiting to hear from Toto, the boy who cried wolf, for all this time. This is the confessional. This is the motherlode. This is the how and the why. The reason why Mercedes have not yet climbed back to the top of the mountain. Chaos, chat. The war. And he talks about the difficulty in F1. How difficult it is and has been to get that car back to success. And they are on the way, he says. But they are not there yet. The Canadian Grand Prix as a circuit, Gilles Villeneuve Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. That track flatters to deceive that Mercedes package. Long straights, short corners, stop-go settings. Now, when we get around Spain, now the real cars, the guys and girls at Red Bull who have mastered that interconnectedness between aero, suspension and chassis. It's these proper old school tracks where they will shine. The likes of Austria, which is next up after Spain, the likes of Silverstone, the likes of Hungary, those tracks, Zandvoort even, those tracks are where you can expect to see Maximilian Verstappen and Checo Perez even, maybe, if he's eating his Weetabix that morning, go really, really well. And James Allison speaks to that. Mean reversion potentially between now and season end. That is what you can expect to see. He speaks to the difficulty of trying to drag Mercedes back to the tops, kicking and screaming. Here's what he says, and again, it's a brilliant turn of phrase. He says, the war to make your car competitive is fought on every front. Who is this chap? James Allison, aka Napoleon. Who talks like this? Like, he's a brilliant mind. Listening to him, you understand not just the Shakespearean way with which he articulates his ideas, but you can understand the substantive that this chap is a brilliant mind. I think, though he says to the contrary, it is no coincidence that while he stepped away from the Mercedes coalface and decided that he was going to work and contribute to Ineos' project to win the America's Cup, it's not coincidence that that's when Mercedes Performance did one of these. He said in this interview, the Beyond the Grid podcast with Clarkson, that he thinks that is nonsense. He contests. He will not throw Mike Elliott under the bus like so many other people have done as far as the design philosophy, the failed zero pod concept. Many people have said Mike Elliott was wholly responsible, lay the blame and culpability for Mercedes' drop-off in performance at his door. James Allison, to his credit, and this is why you got to love this chap, will not do it. Watch that piece back. He sounds very jovial talking about all of the missteps hitherto of Mercedes Petronas AMG. However, when he talks about that, when Tom Clarkson insinuates that had he been there, potentially Mercedes wouldn't have seen the drop-off in performance that they have done, James Allison is having none of it. He will not throw his colleague, his ex-colleague Mike Elliott under the bus, and he is to be commended for that. You could argue that his team principal, if Ross Brawn's accounts are to be held with any truth, that's something that team principal Toto, the boy who cried wolf, lacks that level of honour and upfrontness. But I digress. When the car isn't good, James Allison confesses, it affects every aspect of your life. Over the past 24 months, when they haven't been able to get a pole or win a race or compete for a championships, Allison confesses to it seeping into every facet of his life. His sleep, his not being able to eat, his relationship with his loved ones, his relationship with the team, all of the team. It's not just Lewis and George and Allison and Toto. It's the guys and girls back at the Brackley and Brixworth factory now. It affects them. These guys get bonuses for wins and podiums. When they are not winning, it affects their ability to pay a mortgage, for Pete's sake. Allison gives colour to this. The F1 you are all in, that you spend more time with your colleagues than you do your loved ones at home. It is indeed your professional duty to do your best to bring that Mercedes package, a package capable of winning races and championships. Oh, the humanity. This, ladies and gents, is absolutely bonkers. Tom Clarkson asks James Allison whether he's hit a eureka moment in that front wing. James Allison rebuttals, no, it wasn't a eureka moment. It was an oh my God, how have we been so stupid hitherto moment. Candid any. Truth saying any. Root cause analysis any. This is the deep dive that Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton fans have been looking for all this time. He's given us the blueprint, helping us to understand. Again, I say for the avoidance of doubt, it is not so much about the what's in this instant as the hows and the whys. Why have Mercedes failed so often and so badly since the glory days of 2020? How has the empire fallen? He's giving it to us, and I love it. Incredible settings. He says, trying to make the car, again, this is another brilliant one that I've got to read out verbatim, excuse me. Trying to get the car to go fast through fast and slow corners. Hitherto, they've had to choose one or the other. Through fast corners, okay, we can set it up like that, but then it's going to be slow on minimum speed turns, your long radius ones, your hairpin-esque ones, a la Rascasse at Monaco as an example. Or make it fast at slow hairpin turns, but then it would be slow going through a Maggots or Beckett's. They couldn't combine the two. And again, he chalks this up to their lack of understanding of the intersectionality, that inner circle of the Venn diagram, the intersecting piece of the Venn diagram, that is where suspension, chassis and aero meets. These guys were operating in silos. He extends this, he extrapolates it and talks more. Here's what he says. What made them so strong in the previous era, I insinuate their ability to work hard and fast but in silos, makes them weak in this new rules and regulations era. Oh, the chaos. Oh, the humanity. What are we doing here? Are you not entertained by James Allison here? He's giving us the cheat code. He says, and again, I want to reiterate this because this is where I'm going to go scorched stuff and get frustrated with James Allison being the brilliant mind that he is. He says, luck in designing a car for this new rule and reg set was happening on a genius concept in the first instance. The skill and the cleverness, the devilment was in keeping the design philosophy on track, and that's what Red Bull have done so well. I would see you that, however, James Allison, and I would raise you this. Excuse me, sir. Have you not read How to Build a Car, the Adrian Newey book? Because if you had read this book, Adrian Newey, the god tier aerodynamicist, the chap that did ground effect in sports car back in 1980 when he was doing his university degree. That chap gives you the blueprint in that book. He speaks ad infinitum about the intersectionality between suspension, aero and chassis. There are pages upon pages in his book about that. He learned that lesson back in 1988 when he designed his Leighton House March 881. It is all in there. If I can read that, Cameron F1, Noddy F1 content creator, then surely the guys and girls at Brixlove, most notably James Allison, Toto Wolff, Mike Elliott, they can read that too. That is all that Adrian Newey talks about. The handbook was there, Kenny, you're a legend. Sounds like they were arrogant management, technical arrogance. He says as much. I'll read it out again for the avoidance of doubt. His words verbatim, and I quote, they were insufficiently self-critical to realise that there were advantages that carried them to 8 Constructors' Championships in this regulation set, this rule set, were now weaknesses. They failed to understand the triumvirate, the way in which suspension, chassis and aero were going to operate. Fail to nail those is to fail to get the assignment as at 2022, and that's what they didn't nail. Oh, the humanity. When asked whether without the cost cap, Mercedes would have been able to expedite for their learning curve, bridge the gap to the race lead in Red Bull quicker, James Allison rebutted that straight out of hand. He said this wasn't a money issue. I've told you already. We failed to understand what was important. It was our values as far as the design philosophy. We were building a car that was fast, had all the downforce in the world, but the drivers could not drive it because it was too twitchy. Again, an ethos, a thesis even, that flies directly in the face of everything that Adrian Newey has ever talked about. Again, in the book, when you read it. How to build a car. He speaks about taking some of the absolute performance out of the car with a view to make it more drivable. These drivers, F1 for the avoidance of doubt, is a story told in temps, won and lost on fine margins. Please see Abu Dhabi 21 for reference. You need for your drivers, your key assets, to be able to extract 110% out of the car. If they lack for confidence in it, then you failed already. And this is the bloody incorrect rogue design philosophy tree that Mercedes found themselves barking up as at 2022 and 2023. What are we doing? This is a tragedy now of Shakespearean proportions. Are they back? Tom Clarkson asks Mercedes man James Allison. He contends they can be competitive at some tracks, but Canada absolutely flattered to deceive owing to its layout. Oh, the humanity. Are you not entertained? James Allison out here spitting F1 bars. This, for the avoidance of doubt, is what we needed. They, in summary, have been distracted by side missions, working on things that made the car better, but that weren't fundamental. Again, for the avoidance of doubt, they have been working on side missions. Oh, the humanity. Lucas, you're a legend. Oh, Lucas, far too kind. So I'm trying out here. I'm looking to improve incrementally, do exactly what Mercedes haven't been doing. Let's get to the Lewis stuff, because this is going to get techie. EC, what are you saying? Mercedes arrogance. Yep, we know this. So why is this news? Just popped in. So sorry if I missed it. EC, we're going to get techie on Lewis now, but go back and rewatch. James Allison has given you the handbook, the root cause analysis as to why the Mercedes AMG Petronas empire has crumbled over the last 3 years or so. In summary, it's technical arrogance. It's failing to understand the holy trinity and the interaction between chassis, suspension and aero. They concentrated on side missions, failed to get the assignment that were the 2022 regulations. Oh, the humanity. Steve A, you're an absolute legend, sir. Go on then, let's talk about, this is the main event now, the Lewis stuff. Because in the title I've talked about Mercedes destroying Lewis, and I don't think that's hyperbole. I will be honest with you. I think there is truth in that. Here's where it gets bloody techie. So first and foremost, at the outset, James Allison was extremely complimentary around Lewis Hamilton, as you'd expect him to be. Lewis hasn't left. James Allison is a man who shoots from the hip, a straight shooter, in fact, to a fault. He even says and confesses as much in the interview, again, Beyond the Grid podcast with Tom Clarkson and James Allison. Go and check it out. 44 minutes of brilliant F1 chat. However, towards the final stages of it, we get onto Lewis Hamilton, as we were always going to, and it gets subtle. Shots were fired, but subtly. James Allison, again, for the avoidance of doubt, spoke to the fact that he will speak his mind to a fault. Toto Wolff, bless him. His gift has been allowing James Allison to interact as he interacts, to be himself to a fault. But because he's so brilliant, he's a key man, right? Almost like Adrian Newey. You give them what they want and let them just work. Genius level settings. And that's what James Allison needs. He fesses up as much in the interview. And here's where he gets techie and starts to talk some truth around Sir Lewis, Carl Davidson, Hamilton. Firstly, with a compliment. He says, for all the drama that comes with Lewis Hamilton sometimes, you forget that. And the times where he's just so brilliant, able to put the car in places that, as near as makes no difference, no other driver in all of F1 history could do. You've just got to stand back in awe, respect it, admire it, drink the greatness that is Sir Lewis Hamilton in. Super complimentary. He speaks about Michael Schumacher because, of course, he worked with Michael Schumacher back in the day, right? 2000 to 2004. Schumacher in his pomp. Tom Clarkson says, as somebody that worked with Schumacher, you're telling me that he's the greatest. Lewis Hamilton, Sir Lewis Hamilton, is the greatest driver that you've ever seen. James Allison responds in kind. Gun to the head. If I have to pick one racing driver ever, I'm picking Sir Lewis, Carl Davidson, Hamilton. And what sort of compliment is that to pay to the departing Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton. It is techie. However, here comes the not so complimentary things. This is James Allison now shooting from the hip. Subtle destruction of Sir Lewis Hamilton. Tom Clarkson asked, listen, the other day, Lewis said about the 8-1 qualifying when responding to that, courtesy of Natalie Pinkham's line of questioning. So Lewis said, you know what? I don't think between now and the end of the season, I don't think I'll ever out-qualify George Russell. Now, the insinuation there is, of course, that there is something foul at hand, that he's not getting the same machinery. That's the insinuation. If we're honest and grown up, that's what Lewis is saying. As he's wrestling with his own mortality and potentially, ostensibly, a lack of pace as versus his teammate, King George Russell, first of his name. Lewis is trying to explain this away, and in saying that, of course, he's talking to a lack of equality within the team. That Mercedes, courtesy of James Allison and Toto Wolff, are giving George Russell preferential treatment. Again, Tom Clarkson says, Lewis says that he won't out-qualify George Russell between now and the end of the season. To that, James Allison, you say what? And here's where it gets techie. Ladies and gents, behave, Cameron. We're all going to have to behave. Here's what James Allison said, and here is where it gets techie. James Allison says, well, if I look at that data season to date, if you've been out-qualified by George Russell 8-1, you extrapolate that between now and the end of the season, I wouldn't be surprised either if Lewis got roundly out-qualified by King George Russell of Kings Lynn, Norfolk, first of his name. Oh, the humanity. James Allison gets statistical on them, and he's right. He's not speaking anything that's inaccurate here. But again, in dancing around the sabotage subject of, he's nailed Lewis. How can that not be Lewis watches that interview. He can't feel good about it, even though James Allison is just putting forth facts and evidence, statistical analysis. If it's 8-1 now and we've only done 9 races, there is 24 in a season. One would assume only then that Lewis would lose at the end of the season in terms of qualifying head-to-head. Oh, the humanity. Tom Clarkson continues. James Allison goes off on this big soliloquy about how in the modern day era, there is something that's weird about the interaction between the car and the tyres. Here's what he means by that. You will see many times in practice a rogue entrant. Somebody will just go randomly purple all of a sudden, like Lewis did a couple races back, or has done a few races season to date, or a K-Mag, or a Yuki Tsunoda. He did it last race, didn't he, in free practice? All of a sudden he was just purple. These random acts, surprise instances where somebody you don't expect will just go purple. But then in the paid sessions, in qualifying 1, 2 and 3, you don't see nor hear from that driver who in a previous free practice session had gone purple. James Allison says that owing to the interaction between the car and these very sensitive temperamental tyres, the way that you extract the quickest lap time A to B is to almost be not trying, not hustling them on, not pushing, almost in a flow state. And testament to that, if I'm going to back up James Allison on this, a couple of times you've heard Max Verstappen season to date say something to the effect of, oh, that was pole. Almost be surprised, right? Because the lap looks and feels slow, but somehow counterintuitively the interaction between this tech spec of car and this compound of tyres per Pirelli, the way that you extract the best time is it often feels like that slow. James Allison then attributes this to the reason why Lewis's pace sometimes goes away from free practice, 2 and 3 in particular, to qualifying. That, he says, is why Lewis is like, what? Where's the pace going? Because he's hustling the car along. When you're trying to get it done, overstepping, over-endeavouring, That's when all of a sudden the combination of this car and these tyres, the pace just goes away. That's not the quickest way from A to B in this rule and reg set. Oh, the humanity. Spitting bars, any James Allison. Telling the truth, McLaren F1 race. This is chaos. Put George in a W12, says Visual. Chaos. Look, the cars, and again, another two things that he mentions. Ferrari and the cars. When asked about the spec and the setup of the cars, because again, if we're grown up here and we're going to have a serious conversation about what Lewis is alluding to, of course he's talking about sabotage. When he talks about the tyre temps being different all of a sudden, of course. When he talks about suddenly the pace has just gone and I don't know, but of course that's what he's talking to. When he says, where are my soft tyres? Of course that's what he's questioning openly and honestly the team now, their authority, and potentially maybe a tad, I don't want to say paranoia, but you're trying to understand, aren't you, if you're Lewis Hamilton, where's the pace going? And of course, that's a many-faced god as far as that root cause analysis, isn't it? Ties is where F1 cars currently suck. Qatar 2020, you're not a bad shout, Kenny. I don't hate that. I would like to see them being able to put... When F1 drivers over the course of a qualifying lap, a hot lap, have to manage tyres over one lap, surely F1 needs to ask questions of itself. Surely. That can't be the way in which we're looking to travel going into the 2026 rules. If you ask me, that's one of the things that they need to fix for. Two final points on Allison, and then we will talk and go back and forth because this needs deep diving. I know you guys will have plenty to say. Where does the pace go? James Allison has told you it's a combination of the intersection between these tyres and this chassis. You cannot push too hard. Oftentimes you hear drivers, Max Verstappen, a number of times season to date, has come over the radio and almost been shocked that he's on pole. Listen out for it. Now that we've talked about it, you will hear these guys like, hey, that's pole or second. They're surprised that they've gone so quickly, because the best way to extract the fastest lap time out of this car, this tech spec of car and these tyres, is to do that. Electronic, you're a legend, sir. Honestly, far too kind. Stop accepting Merck's public mea culpas. ? Airing out your sins doesn't make you free. Merck effed up with Lewis and technical Eng. Not hearing that BS. Merck playing games and need to stop gaslighting. Gaslighting us, can bloody know it's a bunch of tomfoolery. Easy. Oh, the humanity. Let me tell you these last two things and then we'll talk. EC. I will try and break that down. And I don't hate the enthusiasm or passion, EC. And listen, you're far too kind, sir. But I think we need to talk. We'll talk to it. We'll break it down. I've talked to it before, but we're going to talk to it again. Right, let me do one of these. Last two things on James, and then we'll get to your comment, EC, and argue for it, because it's a worthy discussion now, isn't it? Especially on the back of what James Allison has said. Look, here's what James said finally. Are the cars different? He was asked by Tom Clarkson. James said unequivocally, for the avoidance of doubt, in no uncertain terms, mechanically and technically, the cars are identical. What he's saying there and what Lewis is insinuating cannot be true in the same instance, because they are diametrically opposed. Hence the title of this video. I think James Allison, unwittingly in what he's said, he's spoken out against all that Lewis Hamilton has been insinuating, hinting at. He even says it. Listen, if we're talking about things that Lewis hasn't said, alluding to the conspiracy theory stuff, then it's nonsense. The cars are identical. Oh, the humanity. What are we doing here, chat? James Allison speaking out against Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton, underscoring that what he's saying is ostensibly false, that there is no difference. We are not sabotaging him. Soft tyre, medium tyres. What are you talking about? This is nonsense, says James Allison. And lastly, he was asked about how he's going to get on EC. This is getting, we'll get techie for another 20 minutes in a minute, but I just want to tell you this final one. Asked, when Tom Clarkson asks James Allison, technical director of Mercedes, I think that is his official title. When Tom Clarkson asks how he thinks Sir Lewis will get on at Ferrari next year, a final barb from Allison directed at Lewis. Although he's just truth saying, he said already to a fault, he can only be truthful, and that can be problematic when you're working in a team as multifaceted and nuanced, as complicated as an F1 team is. His response to Tom Clarkson's question about Ferrari and how Lewis will get on next year was something to this effect, and this is where it gets super techie, chat. The humanity. Here's what he said. I think if Lewis goes over there and gets Ferrari, that they are the brand and that thing comes first, then he won't have any issues. But if that's not the case, in brackets unsaid, then Lewis might have problems next year. Oh, the humanity. And this comes from James Allison, a dude who worked for Ferrari in the glory years 2000 to 2004 with Michael Schumacher, the Reagan-Meister, the Red Baron. Oh, the humanity. Oh, the chaos. What are we saying, James Allison? That Lewis, and he talked about drama earlier, didn't he? Did you hear me say that? Remember when I said that sometimes Lewis's brilliance can have the drama that comes with working with Lewis fade to black? What are you saying, James Allison? I wish you'd have said more, chap. Drama. That Lewis might struggle with the brand coming first at Ferrari. Oh, the humanity. What do you mean? Cameron, in all fairness, Lewis has been critical of the Pirelli tyres. Lewis has been critical of a lot of things. Right, go on then. Let's talk. I hope you enjoyed that deep dive. Go and listen to it. I will link the video in the description. Beyond the Grid sometimes, listen, they talk to some boring characters sometimes. James Allison is God tier. I enjoyed every second of that 44-minute chat. If you're an F1 fan, if you're a fan of Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton, there is insight baked therein that you won't get anywhere else. This is again what we want, not dissimilar to the bloody chat that we talked about yesterday with Carlos Sainz Jr. Not enough of this content is on display, accessible. We want to talk about the sport that we love. These guys are going on like the news cycle only exists during a race weekend. What are we doing? EC, they need to talk about Mercedes 2025 instead of Lewis. Messy-ish camp. Go on then, EC. Listen, you've been too kind already. Let me talk to your point. Stop accepting Mercedes mea culpas, question mark. But EC, the problem is, right, go on then, Electronic. The problem is, you can go back and listen to some of my videos, not to pat myself on the back and say, like, yeah, I'm not going to Nostradamus myself, anoint myself Nostradamus. But you can go back and look at videos that I made about, let's say 24 months ago with Peter Windsor, no less. Peter Windsor, 24 months ago, before James Allison has done this confessional with Beyond the Grid and Tom Clarkson as at today. Peter Windsor was calling them out for this level of technical arrogance 24 months ago. This is why I like being around these guys, not insiders necessarily, not anymore, but Peter Windsor has length and skin in the game, right? He's been around Mansell, and Senna advised him about how to drive Macau and the contour and the pinch, but it's been around these guys, so this expertise for a guy like Windsor is almost second nature, right? It's a language that he just speaks, doesn't need to think about it necessarily, hangs around Scarbs and all these technical wizards and just gets it, knows Adrian Newey, indeed he's on first name terms because he worked with him back in the day at Williams. So when you're talking to these guys, they can just see clear from a distance, right? What was failing Mercedes is, as James Allison has asserted today, a level of technical arrogance, failing to be self-critical enough to change, to do an about turn. Zero pod. Why are you rolling forward the zero pod into 2023? I will contest. The one thing again that I disagreed with in James Allison's soliloquies is that Red Bull were lucky to happen upon a god-tier design philosophy. They were not lucky. Adrian Newey doesn't do luck in ground effect. We've been talking about this for a lot. Like, what are you doing, Mercedes? This is nonsense. If I, as noddy and F1 mind as I am, can see that technical arrogance and failing to understand the holy trinity that is chassis, suspension and aero in a ground effect era is what caused them and was always going to cause them these problems, how come they didn't? This is where I disagree respectfully with what James Allison said, that there was luck in Red Bulls happening on a God-tier design philosophy in the first instance in 2022. Lest we forget, Mercedes went away and divested out of developing the 2021 concept and wanted to focus on 2022. Red Bull did not. A bird in the hand is worth two in the bush was Red Bull's thesis. Let's get 2021 over the line. They were all in 10/10ths on that 2021 project. And so they didn't have a lot of time, or at least not as much as Mercedes, to develop the concept for the new rules and regs in 2022. And this only makes it more tragic now, Mercedes' failure, that they threw more time at it than their counterparts and principal rivals in Red Bull. Tragedy. Go on then, EC. Let me dissect. Mercedes effed up with Lewis and the tech regs. So that I think they've... All right. Have they mismanaged Lewis? Look, I don't think we'd be having these conversations if you reverse the qualifying head-to-heads. Had Lewis let me go this far. Had Lewis out-qualified George in Canada, I don't think we'd be having these conversations. I don't think Lewis Hamilton Evangelist would be as in uproar as we are to a certain extent. I'm a part-time member sometimes, even though they'll tell me that. I'm not trying to tell me what I am from what I'm not. The F1 community is undefeated, undisputed as far as toxicity, isn't it? Derek, it's always the driver. Look at McLaren without Senna, Ferrari without Michael, Mercedes are next. Over for them. Oh, Derek. Is it over for them, Derek, though? Let me deal with EC's thing, though. I'll deal with EC's thing. You said is it over for Mercedes? And thank you, mate. You're far too kind. Look, check this out. Did they F up with Sir Lewis? I think this is a bit of a non sequitur here. I think this is a non-entity of an argument. If Lewis again put it on pole, I think this is a many-faced God as far as the attributables, culpability, the reasoning, the hows and the whys. And Lewis underperforming George 8-1 is absolutely part of it. There wouldn't be a conspiracy theory, right, if Lewis had been on job and had qualified, roundly out-qualified King George Russell of King's Lynn, Norfolk. EC's not having it, not hearing that BS. Mercedes playing games and need to stop gaslighting us. It's a bunch of tomfoolery. Electronic, you sound like my mum with your words that you're using. Are they gaslighting? I think James Allison's just a truth saying. I think you'd see it. You'd hear it in him. The one time I think he was telling a porky was when he was asked about Mike Elliott and were he still at the wheel, whether they would have underperformed as materially as they have. Then you can kind of see it in him. You can hear it in his tone. I don't think James Allison tells lies very well. You can hear. I think he blames yet and still the guys and girls who were meant to be managing the design philosophy when he wasn't there. But he can't say that, can he? He can't say that, not ostensibly, but he lets it slip when he's talking about Lewis, and that's why I feel like destroy probably a bit harsh. But why he was, in his take on what Lewis has been saying, in what Lewis is insinuating and alluding to, that there is foul play at hand. I think Allison was he was truth saying. I think he was speaking. And even, easy when you break it down, some of the things, why didn't they put Lewis on mediums last race? Well, because he didn't have any fresh mediums. Why didn't they put him on softs? Well, the only softs that they had were like 3 laps old, 3 hard. Well, look, an in lap, an out lap, and a hard quali lap. Those are like materially worn down soft compound tyres with how many laps left? 13, 14. If you've got a fresh set of hards, because this is an either or choice, right? If you've got a fresh set of hards and a set of softs, which are quicker, but are 3 laps old, I think I don't know. You can have an argument, and people might point at previous example. Lance Stroll did 24 laps on softs, but in different circumstances, right? And I know I'm backing Mercedes, having been very, very critical of them erstwhile. But I just think this is not a lack of knowledge necessarily, but almost like a confirmation bias sometimes, has you start from a position and reverse engineer the evidence to support that position. And I've done it myself, EC. You've heard me come out and cry, oh, they've sabotaged Lewis like that. Like, if you take a step back and try and see the the F1 wood for the F1 trees, I think it's really hard to make a case that and this isn't to say that this isn't happening, because I'm not close enough to it to say definitively, but in my humble opinion, with the little knowledge of F1 that I do have, having seen sabotage in previous eras, in previous F1 season, I'm not sure that you can say, look, here's the thing, EC. Let me say this. You're a legend, EC. If Merc lead and managed by data alone, they are not in the racing business as we love it. They are engine Mercedes, which, oh my gosh, EC. You're going in a bit there, mate. McLaren's problem was the engine. Oh, we're talking about engines visual. All right, so let's talk about engines. Look, people have said that Mercedes were just engine merchants, and that there is an element of truth to that, because they nailed the split turbo and were pumping out anywhere between 30 and 40 brake horsepower more than their rivals in Red Bull, courtesy of that Renault power unit, which since, again, via Alpine, we've seen that that's not something that they have in their locker, and that's why they're coming out of that engine manufacturer business, becoming a customer team. But as far as Mercedes, listen, I think they're a brilliant team, but again, they've made mistakes recently. And what you're seeing sometimes, I think, as far as Canada and Monaco in their communication, ostensibly to one Sir Lewis, Carl Davidson, Hamilton, is Hanlon's razor in effect, right? Never attribute to malice that which you can attribute to stupidity and or ineptitude. Why didn't they tell Lewis to push? Well, was Bono considering as a first priority thing that Lewis needs to get to the end of the race on these tyres? Did he drop the ball? I just think these are more plausible explanations than is sabotage. Why would Mercedes say, okay, so they want George Russell. They will want, if given the option as a team, they will absolutely want George Russell to beat Lewis Hamilton, because he's the driver staying on next year. He is the going concern now. In him is their durable competitive advantage, if some publications are to be believed, depending on whether they get Max Verstappen and Kimi Andrea Antonelli next year, or Andrea Kimi Antonelli. Do you know what I mean? It's techie. It is techie. And I just think, gun to the head, here's what I was saying. Gun to the head, am I going to attribute all of this stuff, mediums, hards, not mediums or softs, the pace disappearing in free practice? I think there are easy explains for each one of these circumstances. So I'd need more evidence to go so rogue, EC, as to call out Mercedes for sabotaging George Russell. Even, I'll say this to you, let me put this forth as my final thesis on this. If you wanted to sabotage Lewis as a team, do you know how easy it would be? I think they are far too invested in a company, in Lewis's, not just Lewis's, but Lewis and George's positive outcomes as far as what it means for their sponsors, what it means for their financial bottom line, to go out there and sabotage it. It would be really, if they wanted to just DNF Lewis, they could just DNF him each and every single time. It would be easy and quick. I said earlier on another video that if I were Toto Wolff and I wanted to get sensitive and in my feelings about this, you're going to accuse me. There's a song by Keisha Cole that says I should have cheated. If you're going to accuse me of sabotaging and deep dive, lean into the tinfoil hattery and conspiracy theories, if I'm Toto Wolff team principal, then I will show you some serious sabotage. After the things that you've levied at me, Toto Wolff, like, you won't even need to argue about the levels of sabotage that I would give that driver. I wouldn't be bothered with it. I wouldn't even entertain it. And I shout out the mods. But you know who else I need to shout out? In fact, I'll shout him out on the next chat. Yeah, shout out Jomo, Lazy, Steve A. You guys are legends, proper legends. Christian Visual legend. Andre, EC, let me hold a couple dollars, man. Yeah. No, EC's far too generous and visual. You guys are legends. Hit the like button. Run real. Let me read out a couple more, and I'm going to run away and be a part-time husband for a bit. Indeed, Lewis belongs to the greats, the greatest there was, but he will not be like Schumacher. Put Ferrari above his own star status, as Allison said. Run real. This is chaos. What, you don't think Lewis? Oh, jeez. Are we saying then? What James Allison is saying is that if Lewis doesn't concede, if Lewis isn't the Kelly Rowland to Scuderia Ferrari as a brand's Beyonce, then he will encounter problems. I hadn't even considered this, This is above my pay grade. But I think James is right, I think Italy, it's techie over there, isn't it? That's Italy's team. Scuderia, Ferraris, the red and the Rosso Corsa, all this stuff, that's Italy's team. And you need to pay it respect. When you hear Rob Spendy talk about the duty and the responsibility, when they were winning at Ferrari 2000 to 2004, when Massa was at the top of his game and on the precipice, the cusp even of a championship in 2008, they were lauded, right? They were worshipped in Italy as kings and queens. But when they were failing, when they were at the bottom of the barrel, Rob Smedley says, when it was more troughs than peaks, Rob Smedley says in Italy, they were spitting at him in the street. So if Lewis gets there and carries some momentum and starts winning and bringing points and victories to Italy's team in Scuderia Ferrari, then it's plain sailing, right? It'll be easy. But if he starts losing, if he starts to stand in stark contrast, if he's diametrically opposed as far as his priorities to Scuderia Ferrari, the brand therein, will lie the problems. Conflict, friction, competing brands potentially. That's where it will be, and it will get techie. I agree with James Ellison in that sense. That's not something that I'd considered hitherto. Christian says, no, can't underestimate the Sir Lewis Hamilton effect. The embrace and worship, oh, the humanity, just wait for it. Well, the marketing, listen, the symbiosis of brand Hamilton and Ferrari is I said it already, right? For F1, how could you get bigger? There is no bigger, as far as marketing, which other driver and F1 team pairing could be greater than the whole like Lewis and Ferrari will be? I don't know of one. I will be honest, it just doesn't even exist. So Lewis in that, and you can talk all you want to about the appreciation in the share price when they announced it, partially owing to the Lewis Hamilton announcement, partially owing to the actual results, what they released quite deliberately on the morning of, and their forecast, again, more optimistic than the market had expected. But I say all that to state, brand Hamilton and brand Ferrari together in one space over humanity. Imagine when Lewis, picture this. Two things. Imagine when Lewis is at testing in the red overalls. Just picture that for a second. Lewis Hamilton in the red overalls of Ferrari alongside Charles Leclerc. Both good looking lads. How do you get more marketable than that? The last time that this happened was 2007 with Lewis and Alonso at McLaren. You just can't even. And you know what that brand, that did for their brand, McLaren and Vodafone, and it was humongous, the adverts that they made. It was bigger than F1, mainstream crossover potential. So in that sense, I don't know. But then there are potential pitfalls if brand Hamilton and Ferrari do one of these. What about if Leclerc keeps out qualifying Lewis and Lewis comes out in the press and says something like he's been saying about George, insinuating that he's not getting the same machinery as he looks his own mortality directly in the eyes. It will get techie, chat, I'm telling you. Sargent. Oh yeah, Madeline's asked me to talk about Aston Martin. So the rumour, let me answer this very quickly from Lucas. What do Mercedes gain from sabotaging? If they sabotage Lewis, they get less points overall in the constructors, which means they potentially will get less prize money. I agree with you. It's a very good point. Very well made, Lucas. However, let me counter you after everything that I've just said. Check this out. That devil's advocate settings. The argument from Lewis Hamilton evangelists isn't they wanted to wholly sabotage Lewis Hamilton. They didn't want for him to DNF. What they'll say, what the tinfoil hat mafia will say, is that they just wanted for George to beat Lewis. Now you can make that case, right? Why didn't they keep out Lewis? Surely that would have been quicker under safety car conditions. Surely that would have been quicker A to B. Well, the counter argument is then, with those tyres, how is he going to push Oscar Piastri? Kind of need the tyre offset to overtake Oscar. It would have been a more difficult job on older tyres. That's the counter argument, but that's what they will say, right? That it's not a DNF of Lewis Hamilton. That would be too far. That would be counterintuitive if you're talking about Mercedes sabotage. What they're talking about, however, is that they want to prioritise George. If they're finishing third and fourth, it will be George in third and Lewis in fourth. As near as makes no difference every time. And that's techie. Christian says it's so techie, Christian. It is so techie. There will be a movie about it, I tell you. Well, the movie's coming out, isn't it? Due next year, the Brad Pitt one, whatever. I'm not interested. I cannot lie. Nor can I pretend to feign interest. I just don't care. Steve A says, did Sir Lewis announce the Ferrari move so it makes the ending of the new Brad Pitt movie? Well, I don't know, Steve. I'm very disinvested even in that whole film thing. Madeline wants me to talk about Aston Martin. Go on then. So around Adrian Newey, look. Let me preface what I'm about to say with this. All F1 publications are created equally, but some are created more equal than others. That's really important when we consider what we're about to talk about, being where Adrian Newey is going to end up even next year. Some are saying McLaren. I thought McLaren previously. Most are saying Ferrari. Business F1 Journal have said that he's already signed a contract with Ferrari. Today, however, more reputable publication, Visual You're a Legend, after Spygate, Merck won't allow any more shenanigans. Well, I don't know about all that, Visual. I don't know whether that puts it beyond the realms of probability. Sabotage is a thing in F1. Always has been, always will be. But I digress. Look, I lost my train of thought now. Visual, you're killing me. Drop a like. Yeah, drop a like, lazy. I'm going away in a minute to be a part-time husband. When Charles was blaming Ferrari, they quickly wafted a finger at... Yeah, well, Mattia Binotto didn't he? He wasn't having it. Adrian Newey, there we go. Look, Adrian Newey, I don't think has signed a contract yet. I thought for a second that he'd already signed with McLaren, and then I thought that it was Ferrari. Business F1 Journal say that he signed a $150 million contract over the course of 4 years or something. Don't believe a word of what they say, because again, all F1 publications are created equally, but some are created more equal than others. Don't trust every word that you read, nor every word that you hear come out of somebody's mouth. Fugazi sometimes. Not all these journalists are hold themselves accountable to the professional code of conduct and ethics, reporting truth, fact-checking with two sources. Some will just peddle it out, and you can't legislate for that, right? You've got to account for it. Truth is important to me. I'm not going to... If I don't believe it, you won't hear me say it. If I can't fact-check it with at least a couple of sources, it will be something like X has reported. That's how you'll hear me articulate it. I don't think... The latest news as far as Adrian Newey is that the guys... Well, go on, no limits. Let's go. See the no limits. Visual says the parent company were already looking at leaving 2019 when new leadership came in. Are you talking about Alpine there, Visual? Let's nail this Newey thing very quickly. Aston Martin, apparently, depending on who you believe or how you like your F1 news cycle packaged, apparently Adrian Newey was taking a tour around Aston Martin's brand new 250 million marquee infrastructure factory. That's the rumour. That's the word on the F1 curb. Which means then, if that's to be believed, that Adrian... Can you hear my missus sneezing downstairs? I hope not. Hay fever. Proper. If that's to be believed then, Adrian Newey has not signed a contract with anyone just yet. At one point, Aston Martin were the favourites to sign him, courtesy of their bankroll, big bankroll, right? By virtue of their Middle Eastern owners. Techie. McLaren too, though, also have their parent companies also 100% owned by Middle Eastern sovereign wealth fund settings, those type of entities. And so they too will have big bank to throw at an Adrian Newey contract. However, Ferrari potentially still, in my humble opinion, still favourites. Just because sometimes Occam's razor, man, the simplest explanation most often is the one that you should attribute, lean into even being. Adrian Newey, go and read the book, How to Build a Car. He said a gazillion times now, he wanted to work with Alonso. He also wanted to work with Lewis Hamilton. And he also dreamed of working for Ferrari just because of the prestige and the heritage. He's always buying old cars, old fancy sexy racing cars alongside Zach Brown. He competed at the Monaco Historic. So there is that allure, right? Ford versus Ferrari, Enzo Ferrari, Scuderia Ferrari, the passion and the heritage and the legacy. You can... Every driver and mechanic and engineer and aerobot, somewhere deep down inside, in their mind's eye, if they're speaking to truth, wouldn't mind at some point spending some time with Ferrari, just to tick that box and scratch that itch, you know? So I think Adrian Newey will tick 2 of his bucket list items, per his own saying, if he goes over and works with them, plus the romanticism of bringing them back. That'll be their first championship since when? 2007. Bloody, as near as makes no difference, 20 years, right? 17 years since a Ferrari driver lifted themselves a driver championship. If Adrian Newey is instrumental in bringing them back to the mountaintop, in bringing them some silverware for the first time in 17 years, what type of romantic story is that? Adrian Newey goes out smashing F1 as the aerodynamic mind, the goatiest one to ever have done it. But I digress. Lazy visual that would signify. This was meant to be a Friday. Is it Friday? We only go for this long on Friday streams. I've gone for too long already, haven't I? But it is... Oh my gosh, we're going to talk about bloody... All right, quickly, lastly, since we're talking news and we've done Allison, we've talked about destroying Lewis, we've talked about Mercedes, are they going to be back? We'll talk about Spanish Grand Prix next time. Lastly, we need to talk about bloody Théo Pourchaire, don't we? We spoke about this yesterday when we were dissecting Carlos Sainz Jr.'s video. The thing that Carlos said that sticks with me more than anything is how many variables there are as far as getting a seat in F1 and winning races and championships that are outside of your control. Being, of course, your monetary circumstance. Do you have a rich daddy, a really, really rich daddy, multi-millionaire rich daddy? Can you get yourself onto a young driver program with Mercedes or with Red Bull or with Ferrari? Because if not, then you can write off your F1 chances straight away. 2, when you're in the ascendancy in your career, when you're about to win an F2, does a seat present itself? Carlos Sainz Jr. said it's a misnomer, a fallacy, a falsehood even, to say that there are 20 seats in F1. At any time, there will be a couple. There won't be massive variances between the drivers currently on the grid this year and next year. 1 or 2 or 3 will leave. So you need to win F2 this year, right? When there's loads of retirements and leaving. Sadly for Théo Pourchaire, his career has been the antithesis to the one that Carlos Sainz Jr. recommended. He won F2 when no one was moving in F1. There were no seats ready, prepared for him to take. And sadly, it looks like his destiny is one where the F1 train might just have passed him. Currently in IndyCar, writes a tweet about how excited he is to compete at the next race, only for Arrows McLaren to sack him off before then. What are we doing? Théo Pourchaire is the F1 driver destined for greatness, whose story just went wrong, who could not get a break, who racing gods turned their back on. My little man, my son, I feel this. Let me tell you why I feel this, a cheeky anecdote. Guess what my son's first name is? Théo. So I feel this more than I'm rooting for Théo Pourchaire as a young driver because my son's got the same name. Like, I want him to do really, really well. Like, I'm backing him. He's brilliant. How can you win F2 in 2024 and not get an F1 drive? My heart breaks and it's sad for me to see the likes of Oscar Piastri on the bloody pit wall, Felipe Drugovich, like doodling on a notepad. Get these guys in F1. In June of 2024, when you've got Danny Rick and Logan Sargent, Lance Stroll taking up a bloody seat, like, what are we doing? Got these young, hungry lions ready to get subbed on, to come off the sub bench, but can't, owing to the lack of infrastructure, lack of teams, barriers to entry, and all of the format. Like, what are we doing here? It saddens me. There's just no point to this, is there? F1 needs to fix up, and they want to talk in their year-end review, courtesy of Mohammed Ben Sulayem, about all this money that they've pummeled and invested into grassroots. How very dare you, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, speaking out of both sides of your face. Like, behave yourself. Is ridiculous. In your opinion, how should the FIA ensure that there are more young drivers? There's an easy answer to that, mate. I wish I could pronounce your name in the Mandarin. Like, I was meant to learn that language and then just gave up because it was too hard. More teams. Get bloody get high tech and like Andretti and Lucky Sons in there. Why can't we revise the Concord Agreement? Listen, if you can only have an extra 2 teams, why can't you revise the Concord Agreement to say, well, we can have an extra 16? Like, do you know what I mean? Back in the day, there were like 36 drivers in one race or whatever. Okay, so the cars have got heavier and bigger and aren't as agile, and you can't fit them around Monaco, etc., etc. But you have an opportunity in 2026 to revise for all that, right? Do you not? Like, why not do that, FIA? Out here bloody doing nonsense and talking about all these stupid things that will take, as far as technical specifications, F1 back to the future. Like, what are we doing? Like, why can't we why are we doing a Mercedes as far as a regulatory body and moving in a way that is nothing if not lacking for agility? This is the regulatory body. What are we doing? Got me mad now. Concord will be revised to the limit. I know, exactly, Jay. I know. And how, like, do you know what I mean? Meanwhile, in Felipe Drugovicville and Teo Pourchaireville and like Jack Doohan, Liam Lawsonville, meanwhile, these guys have got their careers are languishing while they sit on the bench, on the sidelines. Meanwhile, the likes of Checo Perez gets a 1+1. Logan Sargent still holding up a seat. What are we doing? Zhou Guanyu, Lance Stroll, Danny Rick, all of these guys who should have been and gone ages ago, who have had their opportunity and not taken advantage of it. What are we doing here, chat? This is an absolute nonsense. Chaos and mayhem. Back tomorrow at 10 a.m. British Standard Time. You guys are legends. Thank you so much for listening to my ramblings. But I digress. The prosecution rests. No further questions, Your Honour.